Alright, so today we're going to be talking about tuples. And before we even start, let me just talk about what tuples are. So tuples and lists, both of them are actually quite similar, but with tuples, the data cannot change. Tuples are what we call immutable. And all that means is, suppose if I create a tuple, and it has a value science, maths, and 23, alright? So 3 random objects in my tuple. I can't append to the tuple, I can't delete from the tuple. That tuple will remain as it is, okay? It's immutable, it cannot change. So let's go ahead and create a tuple, and then you'll slowly understand how things work. So creating a tuple is not at all hard. For example, with lists, we use square brackets, dictionaries, curly brackets. In tuples, we use our normal round brackets. So tup1 is equal to, and then let's go ahead and put in 3 objects. Maths, 23, and dogs. Alright? So this is our tuple, right? Now if you notice with our tuple, there is no append function. If I try appending something to our tuple, ASD, I get an error. Tuple object has no attribute append. If I try to delete an object of our tuple, if I say tup1 delete and delete the maths object, what happens? Tuple object does not support item deletion. So looking at these errors, we can now tell that when you create a tuple, no matter what you do, you can't edit the objects in it. However, you can always reinitialize the variable with a new tuple, so with new data, sorry. So tup1 can now be equal to cheese. And if I now print out tup1, I will get cheese because I've set the variable tup1 to a new tuple, alright? So now that we're talking about tuples, let's go ahead and understand why do we use tuples. Well, think about it. For example, if you were getting the user's location, right? What you could do is you could store his coordinates in a tuple, and you can create that new tuple every second. With lists, however, what you do is you'd append to that list every single time a new coordinate location came. So think of tuples as an immutable object which will never change. Maybe a high score. The high score could be stored in a tuple, and whenever a new high score comes, you can create a new tuple variable. Stuff like that. But basic concept is tuples do not change. Once you create one, it's hard to edit unless you create a new variable. Alright, so now that we're here, let's go ahead and talk about slicing. Just like in lists, we learned about you can slice. So I can say from tup1 to tup5, or I can get the first object, second object. Indexation is there in tuples. So I can do something along the lines of tup1, and if I want to get the first value, I'll now get maths. If I do tup1, second value, I'll get 23, and so on. And then, just like we learned about lists, there's also the concept of slicing. So I can do something like tup1, 0 to 2. So I'll get maths and 23. If I do tup1, 0 to 3, I'll get all of them. Maths, 23, dogs. So just like in lists, tuples also have the concept of slicing. You can get the first value, the second value, as many values as you want using the slicing that we learned via lists. And before I end this lecture, let's go over one more function actually, and that's going to be the delete function. So there's no way to delete the objects in a tuple. But what if you want to completely remove the tuple? You don't want the tuple to exist anymore. Then what do? Well, just like we learned with lists, it's the exact same function, del tup1. So it's quite simple actually, there's nothing much to tuples, but once you understand what's actually going on, it makes life a lot more easier. Alright, so let's quickly recap what we learned with tuples. Tuples are an immutable object. That means that the data that you put in a tuple cannot be appended, cannot be deleted. You can recreate the variable and put in new information, but once you create a tuple, you cannot change it. Now, tuples and lists are actually quite similar in the sense of slicing and data values. Tups or tuples can hold any sorts of data values that you want, and using slicing and indexing, you can get the values that you want. For example, over here, like we did, for the first value for our tuple was maths by calling this index function. Alright? Then we learned that you can also slice and how to delete a tuple. Great. So now that we understood the basic data types in Python, I want to move on to some conditional statements, loops, and so on. See you in the next lecture.